Hi, I'm Robin Waite, author of best-selling book Online Business Startup, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my top tips when you come around to launching your website. So my first tip is not to rush the process of launching a website or leave it to the last minute. It's quite common for people to choose Friday as the day they want to launch their website. And imagine if things don't go quite to plan, and then it's kind of 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when you launch your website. Your web designer is kind of like celebrating, going down the pub, drinking pints of beer, and then you realise on Friday evening at 6 o'clock that something's not quite right with the site, and now nobody's available to fix those problems, and you've got to kind of live with that feeling all over the weekend. So Friday is typically a really bad day to launch your website. Monday's a really good day because it means that you've got lots of time to fix any problems. I hope as well that part of the problem of rushing your website launch means that perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to test your site as thoroughly as you might have planned. So first and foremost, I suggest don't be disheartened if your site launch is late or last minute or feels rushed. And if there are bugs there, kind of those are to be expected. But typically, most of the 99% of the work will have been done. So last minute changes can happen really, really quickly. But equally, if you spot something at the last minute, on Friday morning, that fundamentally you need changing, don't forget that that's going to affect the launch time for your website. So sometimes you can. I've stripped out features of websites before we've launched because they're not quite right or not quite as what the customer expected. So it means that what we can do is we can launch on time. We can switch those features off. We can fix the problems that the customer might have found, and then we can just add those updates in softly so that they just appear online as and when they're ready. It just means that we hit the launch date, but it doesn't feel rushed, and it means that we can solve any problems that we might have found at a later date without the added pressure of trying to get the site live. My second tip is just to remind you that your website is an organic product or project, so you should never consider it to be finished. So even when you launch it, immediately it's out of date. The web moves so fast these days. We used to work on a 3-year kind of life cycle for a website, sort of when we started out in 2004. Now you're probably talking about your website being out of date within a year and a half. So you should be constantly looking to evolve and update your website on a regular basis. And don't forget that any features which your website doesn't have now, you should be able to enhance your website by adding those new features or making subtle design tweaks as time goes on. What this means is that when the site launches, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, because the imperfections that you see as a business owner, potentially your customers is totally, they just miss it. They just don't see those imperfections, and you may just be looking in too granular a detail at your website. Obviously, if there are glaring problems, then yeah, you want to get in there and fix those, because those potentially might have an impact on sales. But changing a color from like a lighter shade of blue to a light blue, or moving a logo like 2 pixels to the left so it aligns properly, probably not many people are going to notice that except for you and your web designer. And those are little niggly things that you can make a list of and then fix post-launch. So my third tip when your website goes live is to test your website thoroughly. In a previous video, I talked about a site launch checklist, and there's a number of things which you can test for when your site goes live. And essentially what we're doing now is we're just checking that from when your website's on a staging server to now when it's on the live server, that everything is in perfect working order. And just to give you a few examples of this off the checklist, so you want to make sure that all of the pages are working. So when you click through the nav, every single one of the pages is working and there are no 404 errors or page missing errors. Make sure that there are no broken links or missing images on your website, so that there are none of those placeholder images with a little tiny image icon in it. Make sure that the image is definitely there. Check any features on the website, so things like blogs. Check out any product listings or category listings, slideshows, your contact form. Make sure that all of those features are working as you would expect them to work. Make sure that when you submit a contact form, the email is definitely getting through to you. Also check that Google Analytics is installed on your website. Test your website on a number of different browsers and devices. So your website's going to look different on an iPhone, it's going to look different on an iPad, it's going to look different on a Mac, on a PC, on a laptop, on different screen resolutions and screen sizes. So as many devices as you've got access to, test it on those. And there's also a few online resources where you can plug your domain name in, and it gives you screenshots of what the website looks on all sorts of different devices as well. Make sure that your website is configured correctly for search engines. So install Google Search Console onto your website. It used to be called Webmaster Tools. Make sure that social media icons are linked up correctly. Make sure that, for example, your Twitter feed is updating on, as you tweet. Make sure that you run your site through the W3C validation tool to make sure that there are no errors on your site code, because those will affect how Google indexes your website through its search engine. And also, you could use a couple of tools like GTmetrix or page load speed to test how quickly the page loads across from different server locations, so UK, Europe, US, and things like that. Again, if the page loads slowly, then it's likely that you're going to lose customers before they've even had a chance to find out who you are and what you do. So my fourth tip is based around Google's how Google works. Essentially, Google's PageRank is based on trust. So the longer your website's been live and in existence, then the more Google trusts you. So it's really important that if you've got a big project that you're developing and it's going to take 4 or 6 months to go live, that potentially what you might want to do is get a holding page up immediately from day 0, so that Google has at least something to index, so that when your full site goes live, you've already built up 4 or 6 months worth of trust with Google. And what this does, it just gives you a bit of a head start when it comes to optimizing your site and your content from a search engine perspective. So just to summarize those key points, don't rush your website launch or leave it till the last minute, because that's going to cause you problems and panic and stress. So just make sure that you give yourself realistic timescales to launch your website in. Make sure that, or just remember that your website is an organic product, so don't ever consider it to be finished. The moment it launches, it's kind of already out of date, and you're going to be constantly adding features to it. So if you don't get features in for launch, you can always add them in afterwards. Test your website thoroughly using a multitude of different tools, and make sure you've got a website checklist, or email me for that checklist. I'll be happy to send it through to you for the one which we use. And then finally, just remember that Google's PageRank is based on trust. So the longer your domain and your website's been live for, the better that trust and your organic search engine optimization PageRank is going to be. So if your website's not quite ready, make sure you put a holding page up there so Google can start to build up that trust. So thanks once again for watching the video. I hope you found some of the tips helpful, and if you've got any questions, then please do leave some comments in the boxes below the video. If you want to be informed about any future videos which I upload, then please click here to subscribe. And then finally, if you haven't already, head on over to Amazon using this button just here to buy the book Online Business Startup. Thanks for watching. I'm Robin Waite.